She wants to play. Oh no, she's hiding. She's shy.
Angus is wearing a mask because he is about to do something illegal.
Look at this forbidden item I keep at home. It's the melody of a song called Glory to Hong Kong. It was our movement's anthem in 2019. But a court declared it illegal, so this music box is now a banned object.
In Hong Kong, this song is an anthem of resistance. Its lyrics call for defending freedom and Hong Kong's identity against Beijing's control. Today, listening to it or distributing it can result in up to 7 years in prison.
This melody brings back so many memories. It's quite ironic that a country as powerful as China and a city as prosperous as Hong Kong can't tolerate a song's existence. They didn't ban a weapon of mass destruction, they banned a song. Honestly, it's absurd.
Angus will never forget that summer. He was 22 years old. For weeks, alongside hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers, he protested against China's tightening grip on his city.
The protests were peaceful. We marched, chanting slogans. 2 million people even came out for one of the demonstrations.
Despite the mass mobilization, authorities turned a blind eye to the protesters' demands. Hong Kong became a battlefield in the fight for democracy. After months of tensions, China crushed the protests, and with them, the democratic aspirations of millions of Hong Kongers.
When I see Hong Kong through the window, I think back to the hope we had 5 years ago. We believed our city would get better, but in the end, things haven't improved. And on top of that, we've lost the freedom we once had. I'm really disappointed and sad.
To subdue the rebellious city, China imposed a draconian law on Hong Kong. A law designed to bring civil society to heel. A necessary measure, according to Hong Kong's pro-Beijing government.
This is the national security law enacted by the National People's Congress Standing Committee in Beijing. This law was extremely effective. It brought back law and order, peace and stability in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong was supposed to be guaranteed a high degree of autonomy until 2047. That was Beijing's promise to the British government at the time of the handover in 1997. But with this law, China put an end to Hong Kong's special status. Now freedoms are being stripped away, and Hong Kongers watch helplessly as their democracy disintegrates. Every week in Hong Kong, it's now mandatory for students to attend a weekly Chinese flag-raising ceremony and stand at attention as China's national anthem plays.
We are Chinese. That's why all the students need to know how to do the flag raising and also how to sing the national anthem. Also help them to build up the sense of belonging of our country.
In recent years, several protest movements have emerged in high schools. In response, authorities launched a major overhaul of school curriculums to re-educate students. Certain events in Chinese history are no longer included in textbooks, such as Mao's Cultural Revolution and the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. Liberal studies lessons, which encouraged critical thinking, have been replaced by patriotic education classes.
Development of the education is updating. So liberal study is really good in the past, but I really appreciate that now I can have a focus to teach the student how to be a good citizenship. The reason why I do that is I hope them to be a good citizenship, like that they can love our Hong Kong, love China.
This teacher has aligned herself with the authorities, but since the curriculum reform, many of her colleagues have refused to teach patriotic education. More than 10,000 teachers are said to have resigned from the public education system.
As the political problems appeared in Hong Kong since the umbrella movement back then, some pro-Chinese politicians started to criticize liberal studies because of the critical approach that we use, that we are brainwashing our students. That we introduce a lot of criticisms against the government. We even encourage the students to hate the government and to hate China, which is of course not true.
This former liberal studies teacher condemns the witch hunt and speaks anonymously because he fears for his safety.
We see a lot of cases where teachers were being accused by their colleagues in the school, by students, by parents, or by even people, unknown people outside the school, about the way that they taught in the classroom. So I'm worried that I may be accused of accusations like that. So I may even be put into prison. That's why I quitted my job.
Hong Kong has become a city ruled by prohibitions and fear of accusation. In the streets, posters offer rewards for the capture of pro-democracy activists in exile, while banners outside police stations encourage Hong Kongers to identify and report suspicious behavior.
That's me. This was a rally to support the police. We were over 100,000. It's moving to see these images again.
Ines Tang leads a pro-China think tank and has always openly supported the government's policies.
These are reports that we've compiled with the help of citizens. We call on Hong Kongers to report suspicious activities, and then we investigate. In one neighborhood, for example, we were alerted that a store was selling illegal items. We went there and discovered books and objects referencing the protests. We determined that this violated the national security law, so we reported it to the police, who conducted their own investigation and shut down the store. That was one of our biggest successes. Seeing that store close and stop its activity was truly a huge accomplishment.
In just 1 year, Ines Tang and his organization have reported more than 100 people to the police.
In these reports, there's a cardinal, ordinary citizens, booksellers, shopkeepers, NGO workers, teachers. Their profession doesn't matter. If we find people violating the national security law, we report them. You might think we see ourselves as vigilantes, but you'd be wrong. We're simply fulfilling our duty as citizens.
The threat of accusation now looms large over Hong Kong's society. And since the implementation of the national security law, no one is beyond Beijing's reach.
I believe everyone can feel the tensions and feel the security. Why there are so many policemen right here? That is because of Jimmy Lai's charm.
第三對今次拘捕有冇嘢想講？對今次拘捕一個懷疑係政治打壓。
This is Jimmy Lai, a billionaire entrepreneur and media tycoon. Here he is seen handcuffed inside his newsroom at Apple Daily. A sworn enemy of Beijing, he was arrested in August 2020, accused of conspiracy and collusion with foreign forces. He has been in solitary confinement ever since and faces life in prison. After Lai's arrest, Apple Daily was forced to shut down. Its bank accounts were frozen, archives seized, and several senior editors jailed. A few months later, another pro-democracy news outlet was also forced to close. Independent media has been silenced.
This is Daniel's old office. It changed as a logistic company now.
Ronson Chen was a deputy editor-in-chief. One morning in December 2021, police knocked on his door. He filmed his arrest. At the same time, 200 police officers raided his newsroom.
It's dangerous to especially speak in the foreign media. There is no more freedom of press in Hong Kong. It's dangerous to me. So I won't give such a conclusion on that. But I will say the room and the space is diminished, smaller and smaller.
Because of the media crackdown, more than 1,000 journalists have lost their jobs.
You know, there are still several million people live in Hong Kong. They still need media, they still need news, they still need truth. It's the Channel C office.
Despite the pressure and risks, Ronson Chen and some of his former colleagues have started a new media outlet. But to survive, they have to censor themselves.
Yes, this is our website. And also, I've told them. I told them to, for example, this is a good example. This is the passport rank news. And my colleagues wrote this. This is saying that the PRC passport rank 117 and is far away from Taiwan's 69. Is quite sensitive. I've asked them to change it, but actually they didn't do it. We have to keep our very high sensitive and alert about the identity of Taiwan. We still can cover all the stories, but we have to mind our wordings. It's not the end that we cannot criticize the government. Yes, but you have to follow their ways. But of course, even if you follow, it does not guarantee that you will be okay all the time.
After targeting private media, Hong Kong authorities took control of RTHK, the public broadcasting group. A new director aligned with Hong Kong's government was appointed, and investigative programs were eliminated. Long praised for its editorial independence, RTHK has now become, according to this journalist, the government's mouthpiece.
The editors there, they are really serious about censorship. The situation is like, I will write the script first, and then he or she will remove the parts which is really controversial. Actually, we just repeat what President Xi Jinping has said, what the senior officials in China have said. But are they true? We cannot investigate them. We can only repeat them and become a propaganda machine.
Along with dictating how the news can be reported, the authorities decided to erase Hong Kong's history.
Let me type something about 2019 protest. What appears about the national security law. RTHK definitely covered the protest in 2019, but I can't find any footage on its YouTube account. It's probably been erased because of how sensitive these footage is.
On management's orders, all archives dating back before 2020 were deleted. In total, hundreds of hours of programming have disappeared from the internet.
I feel like it's kind of similar to the George Orwell's novel of 1984. Like how the dictator, the big brothers are trying to remove or rewrite the history. It's just like what the Hong Kong government is doing. And the goal is to control the future. And the future will be, maybe as they think, will be peaceful, will be... Yeah, but then, is it the Hong Kong we want? I don't really think so.
To control Hong Kong's future and crush any spirit of resistance, the government now routinely invokes the National Security Law, which was enacted in June 2020. The law was initially drafted in Hong Kong's Legislative Council offices by Regina Ip. A legislator and the government's third highest-ranking official, she is pleased with the law's final version, which was written in Beijing by Chinese authorities.
They enacted 4 offenses: secession, breaking away part of country, subversion, overthrow of government, local terrorist activities, and collusion with external forces.
The law punishes anyone who refuses to pledge allegiance to China. It has muzzled the pro-democracy movement and sent the last opposition lawmakers to prison.
My former colleagues, some of them were my neighbors, you know. It is really highly regrettable that they misjudged the situation. They really thought they could overthrow the government and come into power. And they overlooked the legal consequences that they might have to face. It is a great pity. But now they have to face the consequences. But what they did great damage to Hong Kong.
To silence all dissenting voices once and for all, Hong Kong lawmakers passed a new set of repressive measures a few months ago. According to an independent organization based in the United States, there are now more than 1,900 political prisoners in Hong Kong.
My name is Tobias Brandner. I'm originally from Switzerland. I've been living in Hong Kong for the past 28 years, and I'm a volunteer prison chaplain. I go to prison usually one day per week, visiting all kinds of inmates, people who have committed murder, who have committed drug trafficking, people who are members of a triad, among them also political prisoners.
Since the crackdown on the pro-democracy movement, Tobias Brandner is one of the last people in Hong Kong with access to opposition figures. On this day, he visited one of the most famous dissidents, a sworn enemy of Beijing who is serving a long prison sentence. For security reasons, the chaplain preferred not to reveal the person's name.
Yes, down here we see the Sekpik prison. My role has changed in the past years because there's been more scrutiny on my work. I have been more tightly watched. The authorities are very careful about outside people's interaction with what they call the sensitive inmates.
According to Tobias Brandner, authorities now fear political prisoners even more than members of the powerful triad mafia groups.
Political prisoners are perceived by the authorities as people who have been disrupting Hong Kong society, who have disturbed Hong Kong society, who signified a threat to the orderly running and ultimately the prosperity of Hong Kong. I don't think they are dangerous, of course. Yeah. They were surely not a threat to the Chinese government, the government in Beijing, at least not in the short term. Maybe in the long term, the Chinese government thought that if there is a well-functioning democracy in Hong Kong, it might cause a threat to their rule because people in China might also call for democratic change. This I don't know.
Recently, 47 activists were sentenced for participating in a primary election organized by Hong Kong's pro-democracy camp in the summer of 2020. The election was legal, but authorities accused the participants of plotting a coup to overthrow the government. After a 2-year trial, 45 of the 47 defendants were sentenced to jail terms of up to 10 years.
My name is Chan Po-ying, and I'm the leader of the League of Social Democrats. My husband is a well-known political figure in Hong Kong. His name is Lung Kwok Hung, but everyone calls him Long Hair. This is my husband. He's one of the 47 defendants. They are all here.
Her husband, Long Hair, is a veteran of the pro-democracy movement and a former member of Hong Kong's Legislative Council. At the end of his trial, Longhair was convicted of conspiracy. He is currently serving a nearly 7-year prison sentence.
This is my husband doing an interview. And this is a photo from when he was young. I'd say it was taken in 1979. This one was taken after the death of Liu Xiaobo, a famous Chinese dissident and Nobel Peace Prize laureate.
Chen Po-ying has fought every battle alongside her husband. More than 40 years dedicated to defending freedoms and human rights in Hong Kong. In recent years, she's seen a new generation of activists emerge around them. Young people who share the same democratic dream.
I have mixed feelings. When I look at these pictures of my husband smiling, it reminds me of good times, and I want to smile too. But when I realize that most of these people are now in prison, it makes me very sad. These people should not have to suffer in prison, especially the younger ones. This should be the best time of their lives, the time when they're building their future. But because of their beliefs, they will have to spend their youth behind bars, and that really makes me angry.
13 of the 45 pro-democracy activists recently convicted were under 30 years old at the time of their arrest.
It is when we went to Singapore to watch the football game. And then scroll a bit, this one in Japan, also with the Chelsea Football Club scarf. This one I took off Ventus when he got arrested. So I ran down 10 floors to take this picture for him because I think it's very important to have a picture for the media to announce what is happening to him, right? Because no one knows what was happening. These people, they bring this, which is a utensil to break through the door if we don't open the door, right? But we did open the door. And then this, and then these are the police, the National Security Police.
Emilia Wong met her boyfriend, Ventus Lau, 10 years ago when they were students. She was a feminist activist, and he had just become involved in politics. For participating in the pro-democracy party's primary election and violating the national security law, Ventus will have to spend another 4.5 years in a high-security prison. This after already serving 3 years in pretrial detention.
So this is the letter from day 1361. Wow. He's counting. Everyday matters. 話今日咧係11月19號星期三，係初選案。This is actually the day when they get sentenced, and he's talking about he is feeling quite numb. So he's not like 3 or 4 years ago when he was first arrested. The tension was very high, and he was always very nervous and very nervous and had a lot of mixed feelings. But on that day he was sentenced, he just felt very calm.
When he was in pretrial detention, Emilia was allowed to visit Ventus every day for 15 minutes. Since his conviction, he is only allowed 2 visits per month.
It's very difficult to say how he is doing because every moment it depends on what is he focusing on at that moment, and it's very difficult to tell. But I guess, as far as I know, he's trying his best to not lose himself inside the prison, right? He is learning different languages, even Vietnamese, Russian, and Japanese, and a lot of new languages. And he's getting a degree inside prison. Dear Ventus, a thought came to my mind suddenly today. It's almost eerie how normal everyday life is in Hong Kong today. Everyone goes to school, work, drinks, dinner, and party like nothing unsettling is happening. However, if we look close enough, we can see how things are different. It's actually totally different from just 5 or 6 years ago. No longer there would be any campaigners or politicians or advocates on the street when you walk around. No more rallies or protests. Who would have imagined Hong Kong would become like this? In a way, we are living a life that looks very normal, but at what cost? And what's there underneath all this peace and quiet? Please write back to me soon. Love, Emilia.
At 23 years old, Sam Chan has just been released from prison.
In prison, the guards removed the net from the basketball hoop, so we lost the real feeling of playing basketball.
And what was the ground like? Gravel?
No, it was concrete, but it was cracked.
Sam is not a journalist or a legislator. He's never been involved in politics. But along with other members of his student association, he too fell under the national security law. He was convicted of subversion for sending packages of chocolate candy to prisoners.
Because of these M&Ms, I was sentenced to 34 months in prison. I never imagined that collecting candy to help out my imprisoned friends would land me in prison. But actually, we've reached a point where anything can happen in Hong Kong.
Sam was accused of trying to recruit prisoners to incite an uprising. The authorities also charged him with spreading pro-democracy slogans.
After my conviction, I found myself in a cell with about 20 other people. At times, there could be up to 40 of us. It was extremely cramped, and it was hard. We had to fight to use the toilet, and the hygiene was terrible. But inside the prison, I found a group of people who shared my values. We spent time together. It was a small glimmer of hope in the midst of suffering.
After 2 years in prison, Sam was finally released for good behavior.
My friends and I often joked that when we'd get out, we'd only be locked up in a new, bigger cell, because Hong Kong has become an open-air prison.
To escape the climate of fear that has hung over the city since the national security law came into effect, many Hong Kongers have chosen exile. More than 150,000 of them have sought refuge in Hong Kong's former colonial ruler, the United Kingdom.
My name is Fin Lau. I'm 30 years old. I am a Hong Kong activist who has been in exile since 2020 because of my advocacy work for democracy and human rights situation in Hong Kong. To be honest, I don't feel safe in the UK. I have been very cautious, so I will keep looking around whether some people may follow me from time to time.
Shortly after he arrived 4 years ago, Fin Lao was brutally attacked in the middle of the street.
Actually, things happened very quickly. They punched my right eye. I thought I lost my right eye. I was blinded, I thought. They keep using their feet to kick me, just keep going after my head. They did not steal anything from me. My phone and my wallet are still with me. They simply attacked me relentlessly. To be honest, even up to today, I don't have 100% proof to prove who they are. But I would say because of different circumstances or evidences, what I would say is highly likely related to the CCP.
In 2019, Fin Lao became famous after calling for a more radical approach to the protest movement. He also campaigned extensively for international sanctions against Hong Kong and Chinese leaders. His stance made him an enemy of the regime.
So on the 3rd of July 2023, I woke up with tons of messages, some offering words of encouragement. So I was puzzled in the very beginning and didn't know what's happened. But in the end, I just knew that I got a 1 million Hong Kong dollar bounty from the Hong Kong authorities. That is equivalent to 100k euros. But my second thought is that why they are doing so. I would say that perhaps their strategy is that they try to isolate ourselves from the communities. They want to create white terror among different diaspora communities.
18 other pro-democracy activists have also been put on a bounty list by the Hong Kong police.
大家好，我係劉祖迪，亦都係其中一個被一個香港政府通緝嘅香港人。但好感謝大家今日企出嚟呢度。
On June 4th, 2024, the Chinese diaspora in Britain commemorated the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing. All the people oppressed by the Chinese government were there: Tibetans, Uyghurs, Hong Kongers.
Because of the loss of freedom in Hong Kong, it's so important to sustain the Hong Kong movement as well as the spirit of fighting for democracy overseas. I believe I could return to Hong Kong someday. I believe history will somehow repeat itself. I believe the Chinese Communist Party will fall just like the Soviet Union. So if you got a time machine, go back to maybe say 40 years ago, if you tell people that the Soviet Union would collapse, people would say you are insane, but in the end we know the history. So that's why I believe dictatorship will follow the same fate. But the key depends on people's will to fight. If we give up now, then we will never be able to go back to Hong Kong. But if we somehow sustain ourselves, we still got a chance.
In June, Hong Kong authorities canceled the passports of 6 activists exiled in the UK, including Fin Lao. The head of the government called on him to surrender immediately or live in fear forever.
Hãy subscribe cho kênh Ghiền Mì Gõ để không bỏ lỡ